Welcome to GoldBoys Live, presented by Pickett Sports Sleeper Picks Hall of Fame Bets. Breaking down week 2 of the NFL, a little reaction from last night. Baseball, a lot to do. It is hoodie season here in the East Coast. It's a little chilly for the first time. So, Brian, Josh, we had a fun one last night. That's one where if you shop around, you should have won no matter which side you were on. There was 5.5, there were 6, there were 6.5. It landed right on 6. Boys, what's going on?
This conspiracy theorists were out when the Eagles did not go for the 2-point conversion.
That was strange. Good point. That was
Yeah,
strange.
once
That was a bad
once
one.
all the sides once all the bad numbers lost, everyone started coming out with, "Oh, why didn't they go for?" Which first off, they should have gone for 2, but it was
Should
really
have.
strange. Yeah, there's no advantage not to. What's the difference between 5 the
100%. It
difference
was a
between
miss.
the
Yeah.
difference between 5 and 6 is so minuscule between 5 and 7. So
Yep.
I was surprised there.
Yeah, it was a weird play. But yeah, I mean, the the highlight of the game, honestly, for me is like 2 weeks in a row that the Eagles are just letting that the other team's quarterback just sort of carve them up in situations where they're trying to come back. I don't really
Yeah.
know what you do with that. I'm not going to say like make the point that their secondary or something is all of a sudden just not good, but it is an interesting Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins, two similar style quarterbacks as well that don't have the strongest arms in the world, but just sort of like seem to get their way at the end. It was really odd.
Yeah, and I would say that, like, even though, all right, Phil, you could look at it one of two ways. Philly's up big, Minnesota comes back. It's a little window dressing. There's some truth to that, but like, there were four. I think there were 4 fumbles in the game, and Philly recovered all of them.
Yeah.
So, I mean, Minnesota, look, they were as good, if not the better team last night. They marched them all up and down the field. Now they can't. They don't have the personnel in the secondary to match up with AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, and then you throw in Goddard and Swift, who had a huge night. So, I mean, look, it was more of a toss-up game, but my takeaway, I just don't think Philly's as good as last year. I mean, we were just talking
No.
off the air before.
The
Like, you
growing
lose
pains.
Steichen, you lose Gannon. I know Philly fans weren't heartbroken to lose Gannon, but that's just a lot of upheaval. They're missing some pieces on defense. I don't think they're great in the secondary. And look, we're only 2 games in, but that's 100% of the games that have been played. So you got to react to something.
Yeah.
Like, if you life on the line right now, I'd pick Dallas to win the division. I really would. I
Wow.
just think Philly's schedule gets tougher, and you look at you think it's a hot take, and wow, Dallas is some monster favorite in the East. It's plus 100 for the Eagles. It's plus 105 for the Cowboys. So
Yeah.
just going down the line here, there's a stretch starting in November where Philly has 5 games against 2 against the Cowboys. They play the 49ers. They play the Bills on a short week, and they play in Kansas City. And that might be the difference in this division. Philly has to play in Kansas City. Dallas doesn't have to play the Chiefs at all. So, look, I mean, they'll both win plenty of games. I'm sure Philly will be in the playoffs and be a factor here, but it is something that crossed my mind. Or maybe Dallas is just a slightly better team. If not, they're even, and Dallas has the easier schedule.
So I'll say this: my biggest concern right now with the Eagles is yesterday they just. I mean, I'll be the first to admit that I was so heavy on Dallas Goedert props last night, and I was so mad that he had 6 catches. And if I just went with the receptions over the
Yeah.
yards, I would have been rich. He got 5 catches like in the first 2 plays of the game. It seemed like, but my biggest thing with the Eagles is, yeah, last night they looked great on the rushing game, but the last 2 weeks they have not been able to throw the football at all. Like
Yeah.
I know it looks okay because Devonta Smith had those 2 big plays. You can't cherry pick stats, but if you take away those 2 big plays, the Eagles average I think 2.2 yards per pass attempt. That is so terrible. Like I know you have the big plays, but they were not able to do anything in the passing game. Especially last year, you saw like one of the things that Steichen had that was so beautiful is these well-designed tight end screens or these well-designed wide receiver out screens. And yesterday they tried to run like 3 or 4 screens. I think they went for a net -2 yards. It seemed like they didn't move. They didn't have any of the right scheming. So it's
Before
really
before
concerning.
Josh comments on that, because you're in Philly, you're a Philly guy. Brian? What is the mood from like Philly fans? Because it's a tough fan base. They're passionate. I feel like some of them are,
No
some of
one's
them can be
happy.
homers, but some of them can be hard on the team. So you say they're not bummed out. They're, hey, we're 2-0. We're really good.
I would say this: it's probably the angriest fan base to be up 2-0 in a series
Yeah.
because, like, from what I know from people that I obviously friends with or follow, no one's happy with the way they played. But you at
Okay.
the end of the day, you can't get too beat up about 2-0. But yeah, I mean, like I said, watching that game, you can't tell me that offense outside of the running game with Swift. What do they do? That's like it was really stale for most of the time, and then you just have Devonta Smith that just beat one-on-one coverages, and that's about all you really had there outside of outside of Swift just having a monster night.
My response to it all, real quick, is simply I'm very happy with all of my preseason action on the 49ers to win the NFC, easily to win their division. I took them straight up and then put them in a bunch of division winner parlays as well, and still like that because they just have the way easier schedule. That was the last point Will really made originally, was the schedule for Philly versus even just the in division rival schedule for Dallas, easier. NFC West, easier. Seahawks might be worse than we even thought. And I don't think the Rams are as good as they showed against a Seahawks team that I think is not as good as we thought, or as bad as a lot of us thought, actually. That's really where I go with it all, is like the Cowboys look nice, but that was a situation that was made for what happened with them and the Giants in week 1. And we'll see a little bit more. I mean, that Jets defense is probably going to keep Dak from looking good again, to be honest, in terms of the numbers that he's able to put up. So we'll see how they react to that. But for the Eagles, I do think they're a little bit below. Like I think they're clearly the 1B in the NFC, and it could be 1C, especially the way Will's talking about the Cowboys being better.
How about this? Well, you guys, true or false? The 2 best teams in the league are the 49ers and the Cowboys. What would you guys say to that?
Can I watch the Chiefs play with
No,
Kelsey?
no, we can't do this. I mean, look, I can tell you in February who's going to win the Super Bowl.
When you say better, yeah, no, because when it comes down to it, I want Mahomes, and then whatever else you want as your second pick. You can have a whole team's defense if my first pick is Mahomes, right? But when it comes to the regular
Chiefs on a neutral field right now, pick them. Who would you take?
In a pick them between the Chiefs
Cowboys,
and
Chiefs, neutral field.
Neutral field, pick them. I would take the Cowboys.
So you're saying okay? So you're kind of agreeing with me.
It's the regular season in a situation where, like, let me put it this way, so that I can
feel
comfortable about what I'm saying. I'm not going to pick the Chiefs to cover more than 3.5-4 points consistently throughout the year. Yeah. I don't think they're going to be as good comparatively to the other teams they're playing during the regular season, especially. And then when it comes to playoff time, it's like, oh, I just need Mahomes to come up with like 4 plays that win me the game. Got it. Okay, that's what I
think it's important just from a standpoint, or interesting from a standpoint of, like, we all came in like, man, the AFC is loaded, which it was. The NFC is not as good. It's sort of the JV, and it's like, man, the 2 best teams might be in the NFC, and Philly's not far behind. Jets are already out of the mix in terms of these elite teams, since he didn't look great. So maybe these conferences aren't as imbalanced as we thought.
And maybe the Browns are better than we think, by the way. That was
I
one
agree.
thing I wanted to say. I think when you said second best team, the first team I thought besides the Chiefs, I was like going through the AFC East and then through the North, and I was like, wait, the Browns. Like, I think their offensive and defensive line being as dominant as they are, that's a good recipe for winning a Super Bowl or getting there.
Yeah, I was going to say, was the reason I mentioned Travis Kelce is just because watching that week 1 game, I think the Chiefs defense played a lot better than I expect them to. So I'm saying, if I just pick up the 2 best teams, if you're telling me, oh, Travis Kelce won't play a snap this year, or like, oh, it's worse than you thought, he's out for 8 weeks, that plays a big difference in how I view the Chiefs, because he just, it's so funny how he's one of the few people in this league that can open up an offense as well as he does, because, even if you can't catch a football, if you're wide open and you have a little shovel pass, even maybe then you can somehow catch that. But
he's literally open every play for like 12 yards. It feels like
it's infuriating to watch if you were playing against the Chiefs, because you can't see downfield sometimes, and sometimes you see these throws. You're like, how the hell is that even possible? Like, So.
You guys want to get to baseball or week 2?
I think week 2, man.
What do you guys, man? It's interesting. There's 272 games played in the NFL season. There's 32 teams, so all these matchups are, I guess what I'm trying to say, it's weird that you have a slate this ugly. Like, there's so many just matchups from, I don't want any part of this game, that game. And I don't know what makes it unappealing. I don't know if you guys have the same thinking. Like, not only just not as much interest, but betting wise, I'm like, I don't want to bet that. I'm in these contests where I got to get 5 picks. It's hard to come up with 5 you really like. It's just sort of an ugly slate for whatever reason.
So it's funny you're saying that, because I'm in one of those with a buddy. We split it and we're going at it each week together. And when we were talking earlier, what I kind of came up with was, like, looking at it as a whole. Opening lines, that the pick 'em that we do as well is like you get the opening line and it freezes, and then that's what you pick off of based on the rest of the week. And so that, basically that leads me to go like, well, this was actually done pretty well. Like, I agree with a lot of these lines. I wish it was like a point this way or a point that way, even half a point this way or that way on so many different spreads, that I was like, wow, I guess they did a great freaking job, because it's tough for me to find it. The other theory that I have around it is, you got to find value. You got to go with your gut. It feels like you're like, oh, I just saw this team do this last week. almost erase it in a way and go like, no, that's not necessarily going to be what happens the rest of the season. There's certain situations, like the way the Giants lost, like the way the Bengals got handled. Like there's a couple things that I think you can come back from this week and go, I know that the last thing I saw was them being this sloppy, but now like that's fine because there's value on the fact that that's being overhyped as a reason to misvalue them.
Speaking of that, I know there's a lot of, trends or this or that where teams that don't cover in week one, like I think it's like 63% in 2014, they come back and cover. To go against that, the one line that I thought was interesting is you talk about how good the Browns are. They're -2 against the Steelers, and the Steelers looked downright atrocious. I know you don't want to overreact, but that was one line where I don't really bet many spreads, and it does seem a little short that you're getting.
And that's
two,
why
even...
that's a stay away for me. Is exactly what I was
exactly.
just saying.
No, I
the
agree.
last thing we just saw was them get pounced and pulverized by the 49ers, my preferred best team in the league. And then we just saw the in-division game where they just had every matchup that they wanted in that game. They did it really well. Burrow was not, you can't tell me he was 100% healthy. Greg calling under 9.5 rushing yards for him, right? So like that's why it's almost like don't forget it, but just use it to your advantage and go like, recency bias is on your side if you just overcome it, man. Just overcome it,
Yeah, when it comes to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, that's 2.5 at DraftKings. I wonder if you'll get a 3 there because I think everyone is going to look at that and just, to Brian's point, be like, oh, the Browns look great. The Steelers look awful. Let me bet the Browns. Browns are sort of a new trendy team.
Yep.
I like the Steelers in a teaser just to get them up to 8.5.
Yeah.
I think it'll be a close game, probably a low scoring game. Total's 39. So you like getting 8.5 in a teaser in a game with a low total. That's probably low variance.
Make sure you're teasing to good numbers like that, like 8.5. Like there's a couple like Jags at 3.5 or 3. I'm like, oh, that's not a good tease at that point for me, right? So, but the 3 games that I'm really looking at that I'm like, all right, this is where people are overhyping what happened last week. One is Jets 8.5 or 9 against the Cowboys. Like that's a huge spread if you don't think that if the Cowboys are gonna be able to score on the Jets. If you think that total at like 39 or so is gonna be accurate, then 8.5 is a lot to expect the team to win by it with that low of a total. The other one would be the Cleveland game where I'm like, it's kind of a stay away, not loving it for me. I don't know if like you said, it would be a tease on the Steelers to make me feel better about it and go from there. In division at home, you think you like Deshaun Watson laying points against a division rival like that?
Kind of a must win for Pittsburgh too, because they would be 0-2 with both losses at home. So it's like, man, you still got all these road. You haven't even been on the road yet. And you're already 0-2. That's not a good start.
To Josh's point,
and the last one I'll just say real quick. The third one is Patriots against the Dolphins, overhyping the Dolphins, underhyping the Patriots.
Yeah. As I said, Josh's point earlier was saying don't like kind of throw things out in week one. Similar to the Steelers, they were the darling of everybody's eyes coming into week one, and it's almost like everyone threw out that hype after week one. So to reverse what you were saying is that people are now so down on them when a week and a half ago you would have probably put them at like an 11-win team, and now they forgot everything from the preseason and they just assume that 1 week tells it all. So I do agree there.
We're an impulsive nation, man. We're an impulsive group of gamblers, and we just like to remember what just happened and jump on it. And it's like, take a second to step back and think about it.
It's also, but there's a nuance to it though, where you guys are saying is 100% right. You don't want to overreact, but there is a point where like, hey, if you're not reacting at all, you're doing that wrong too. Like look at Colorado in college football, where it's like, oh, I'm not going to overreact. Well, you know what? You should probably have some sort of adjustment because they're like way better than everyone thought. So there's definitely a delicate balance between, hey, I'm not going to ignore it. It's not everything, but it's not nothing.
And then when you play it, when you don't ignore it, do it correctly. Because the Colorado example made me think of how that was a way where I was like, well, I think it was still 40-1 to get Sanders at for Heisman. Right.
Well, what is his odds now?
And it was by the end of the last game, it was like 20 at the end of it, and even after a little day after that, it was 15-1. So that would be a good great example.
He's 25-1 right now.
Okay. Yeah. What how about just a couple best, but one best bet from each of you on aside from this? What is there one game where hey, life on the line? Not life on the line, but like right now, best bet. I have to win a bet. Who you got?
Can I do a player prop?
No, I want a side.
You want a side?
Yeah. Not easy. I don't have like some great answer either.
It's a hard week. What about the Colts?
Oof. Ugh.
I know.
Ugh.
Rookie quarterback on the road, but rookie quarterback at home.
Yeah.
CJ Stroud had 10 throws where he just missed dudes. What we're calling bad throws as a stat these days.
So you're taking the Colts on the road. That game's in Houston.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Rookie quarterback on the road, but then you have the other CJ Stroud at home. Whatever.
So you like Indy?
Yeah, I like Anthony Richardson more than I like CJ Stroud. For
Okay,
sure.
I didn't get the home road thing.
Sorry, yeah,
your
that's
team
what I meant.
takes on
Anthony
the road.
Richardson on the road. Yeah.
Boy, I don't know.
I'll take a gross one if I have to win a
I love
bet.
gross ones. Go.
I'll take Washington plus 3.5. Give me the hook on
That
that
is
on that
no,
field
an
goal.
ugly one. I don't
No.
like that. I actually like
I'm
Denver in
out.
that one.
I would say 3.5. We talk about low totals.
Yeah.
If it's a big
Nope.
defensive game, if I can get a backdoor cover for 3.5,
I'm considering buying. I'm considering buying a half a point or a point and going with Denver.
What's the
I
money
just don't
line? You
know.
might just
I
be
don't. I
better
don't.
off with the money line. Minus 185 on a money line might be just better.
Yeah.
I'm in some survivors. I've thought about using Denver just because you got an 0-1 team at home. They also lost a home game already. Like, this is it for them. Washington's fat and happy. They're 1-0. They looked terrible last week against Arizona. That actually made me more confident in a weird way because I got these bets on Arizona to go to winless. People can be like, hey, Arizona almost won week 1. Like, your bet's terrible. It's not in good shape. I was like, I could look at it the other way. Washington did everything they could to give that game to Arizona, and Arizona still couldn't win it. So I would just say if Arizona doesn't beat the Giants this week, if you look at the schedule, it could be a while because that team is really bad. Even
We
though
said that before the season.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. For Arizona, I got a fun one real quick. It's not life on the line. My life on the line bet, without going too far into it, is Calvin Ridley over 68.5 receiving yards against the Chefs, who just hemorrhage points to wide receivers and yards and all that. So I think he's a top 8 wide receiver in the league right now. He's just right back on his bullshit, to be honest. But
yeah, he's played well. They played
Chiefs
like we said though. Chiefs played well on defense last week, but
yeah, they played better. But I think L'Jarius Sneed is also he's their best DB. He was in the slot, and that's where Christian Kirk plays. I don't know if they're going to move him back out so he can cover Ridley, but I would say real quick on the Cardinals too. A fun one that I was kind of put onto and really liked it was the Cardinals' lowest scoring team on Sunday, plus 1,000 on FanDuel.
Wow.
And you're getting a little bit of juice because the Jets are favored at 6-1.
Oh yeah,
because they have a man. What's their quarterback's name again? I've already forgot.
Zach Wilson is a top 3 quarterback in the NFL. Hot take.
There's one of the bets I was talking about with Brad earlier that was interesting was Zach Wilson over 12.5 rushing yards was plus money. He'll be running for his goddamn life. But look, one team has Garrett Wilson and Breece Hall and Dalvin Cook, and like one team has a dinged up, James Conner, and then I think Marquise Brown is also dinged up. They threw up all over.
That's
like literally
one.
Washington threw up on them and then they just threw up directly back on them. So why wouldn't you think that's going to happen again?
I didn't give it out yet, but I did bet under 17.5 team total for Arizona. Like I said, I watched a lot of that game versus Washington. They did absolutely nothing. So
do you think the Jets can get 18 points? Their defense might get one.
Yeah, I mean, I just think that Dallas will look at that and say, hey, as long as we don't turn it over, we'll be okay. We'll get to 20, 17, 20 points. So let's play conservative. So I can see both teams playing conservative, which makes you like the points. It makes you like the under. You're getting to a point now where, man, 38 in an NFL game where weather's not a factor. It's very hard to stay like under 38, under 39, but I could see both teams being ultra conservative. Both defenses are really good. But like you said, hey, good defense can lead to offense sometimes. You get a turnover at the right time or an interception. So
I would bank on Dak throwing a pick or two, huh?
I don't think so. I would not. I would go the other way because he's made comments in the offseason like, hey, I'm not going to turn the ball over as much as I did last year. So I think he's going to be focused on, hey, let's be conservative. Sort of what Josh Allen said he was going to do, where it's like, hey, I'm going to be so much more careful.
He lied.
And then he literally was like 5 yards from the first down line
himself.
with 2 dudes on him and
can't
just
help himself.
lowering his shoulder.
He cracks me up. I was going to say, Will, I think you mentioned, do you have action on the Bears this week?
I took him at 3. At 2.5, it's totally different. Like
no, I agree with that. Yeah. But Josh is mentioning one of his player props. I was talking to our friend Quan about the Bears. How gross does this sound? What?
Stephen Kwan, the Indians?
That's the guy. That's the guy. Boy. No, the guy from GoldBoys.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, because he's a big Bears fan. This is so gross, but I actually kind of am with you with the Bears keeping this close. This is the grossest bet I may ever make, but I haven't bet it yet. But Justin Fields' passing yards is at 169.5. And I just feel like I've only ever bet his passing unders, but even before the game got out of hand last week, he threw for 14 attempts in the first half when it was close. And I just think the Buccaneers are so good at stopping the run that they're going to have to do something. I actually might take action on it and over for Fields, which is one of the grossest things I've ever said.
That does sound low, just off without looking into it.
I mean, in terms of like projections, I mean, like it's 175 most books. I have them at like 184. So I just feel like asking for 170 is like
all right. I mean, I do think the Bucks are gonna win this game, though.
Yeah.
I don't really like.
What makes you so confident?
maybe I'm overhyping the hype and love that Baker's getting.
3.2 yards per play last week for Tampa.
He wasn't the worst. I think Desmond Ridder when he on pass plays was worse, but yeah, no, I don't have much for you to defend that necessarily. That was a bad defense they were playing against, but like the Bears might be worse than the Vikings on defense, honestly.
Yeah.
I just don't like anything about the Bears except for Justin Fields and Khalil Herbert in the backfield. Like that's it.
I think this is a class. This line, especially at 3, was a classic overreaction where the Bears season wins was 7.5, even though we all liked under, but Tampa season win was 6.5. And now Tampa's a 3-point favorite. Like that doesn't really, the math doesn't really add up there where what you give the Bucks up a point or so for home field. I just think that's a massive overreaction. At 2.5, it's, you basically have to win the game. There's not as much value in 2.5. At 3 is such a key number, but I don't know.
That's fine.
I'll say this: Kirk Cousins last week averaged almost 8 yards per pass attempt. And if you think about this Bears offense, it's basically the Vikings. Like DJ Moore is like Justin Jefferson, Chase Claypool is your Jordan Addison. It's very similar.
Maybe the best game of the week. Chiefs laying 3. There's some 3.5s at the Jags. It'd be hard to imagine. I don't think Mahomes has ever been 0-2. The Chiefs coming off a loss, extra time to prepare. I don't want to lay 3.5 at 3. I guess you could talk me into it. It's hard to envision.
I can't talk you into the Jags at 3.5.
I don't want to fade Andy Reid off a loss with extra time to prepare. Mahomes off a loss. They can't be like
the extra time's big.
The
As you mentioned, I mean, he's got such a great career off bye week. It's not a bye week, but it is
Basically.
10 days.
Same concept of having extra time.
Exactly. Yeah, that is what scares me. I mean, it's crazy to say. I hate the argument of like, well, this team would be 0-2. It's like,
I know,
okay,
me too.
Well, then this team would be 0-2. Like this week they're gonna fucking lose. I don't care what that makes their record. But at the same time, the Andy Reid with time thing is what scares me more than like, well, Pat Mahomes will will them to a win because they have to go 1-1 at least. Like that's not a reason. But Andy Mahomes, Andy with
Andy Mahomes,
time.
baby.
Andy Mahomes, basically. Yeah, no, I suppose to stay away. There's no great way to tease that, like we were saying at the start. So like, but it is sexy. Like it's a sexy Jags to be better than you think.
Yeah. Joe says I'll talk Packers Falcons yet. To me, that's just tease the underdog at 1.5. I don't.
Yeah. Thank you.
The favorites flipped now. Atlanta was getting 1.5. Now they're laying 1.5.
Were they ever dogs?
Yeah.
Because I played in the opening. Like I said, I'm playing the opening spread. I think it's 1.5 Green Bay that they froze it at. Maybe I misread it. But...
So Green Bay was favored by a point and a half, and now Atlanta's favored by 1.5. Okay, I teased both of them plus 7.5.
It was like 65% of the money I think was on Atlanta.
I don't have a good feel for that game. I mean that's important too to recognize. Hey, you don't have to bet every game. That's the advantage we have as bettors. They have to put a lineup for every game. We don't have to bet every game.
I think I do have a beat on that. Like I still like the Packers. Maybe I need to chill because I feel so good about how right I was about the Packers last week being that much better than the Bears without Christian Watson. But like I still like them more than I like the Falcons. Like the Falcons on defense showed me that they're not going to be good. They just got run all over by the Panthers.
If they gave up 10 points.
Turnovers. There was 2 turnovers inside the 30 for the Panthers.
Yeah.
One of them on downs, right? And then a fumble or whatever.
Well, I mean, downs is when you stop a team. So that,
all right. Well, it's called turnover on downs. What do you want to say? I don't know.
Turnovers is more like, it's a fluky thing. Like you just cough the ball up. I mean, if you're stopping someone, you're stopping. And it's hard to kill a team's defense when you give up 10 points.
They gave up like the 6th most rushing yards on the week too. So they were getting gashed up. Right. And
Carolina had under 4 yards per play. So Carolina did nothing on offense. Carolina had 280 total yards of offense. Wow. Neither team did anything on offense.
There was no passing yards. Yeah.
220 yards for Atlanta. Nobody did anything. Oh my God.
If anyone watched NFL Red Zone, that was the one game where it was like, are they actually playing? Like, is that game going on?
And that's a misleading final because, man, neither team did anything on offense. And boy, 220 for Atlanta, 280 for
I believe
Carolina.
There was
that's
like
not a
24-10
final.
I believe the Falcons had like 10. I think they had 12 total first downs in that game. I think that was the stat.
And it was tied in the fourth quarter. Yeah.
Crazy stat to have 12 first downs and put up 24 points. That doesn't even seem real.
Do you guys want to fire off any bets? I know I got to leave about 5.
Yeah. What do you got for baseball? I don't love the card here. I don't think I've bet anything yet.
I haven't.
I would look towards Steele maybe with the Cubs going with Steele going for the Cubs against Arizona versus Flott. That's an interesting game for the wild card. That's a fun wild card race in the NL. All these teams bunched up, so we got some great races. I know once football starts, it's all football all the time, but man, that's a fun race with all these teams in the mix here. Trying to see if anything else jumps out at me. Anything you've played?
Not baseball, man. I do want to say, because this is the last chance before for football. I'm sorry, I'm just going to throw a couple more out there because I
Yeah,
didn't
go
even
ahead.
look at baseball today because I was like getting these touchdown props in and receiving props and stuff like that. So I also took Chubb to get a touchdown because it was plus 125. It's now plus 120, but still play it. I think that's a really good number for him. He scored a bunch of touchdowns both games last year against the Steelers. There was a couple other instances in the last game where the only reason he didn't get the touchdowns was he wasn't in on one drive. He had to come out, and then there was a little 3-yard touchdown pass, and Watson ran it in from 13, which can still happen again. But I don't think he's going to get robbed like that. He's the clear RB1. There is no two, and he'll be the goal line back when he wasn't dinged up for one freaking set of downs.
Yeah, I have a question too. How much do you buy into Nick Chubb last week in terms of
A lot.
snap count? Just because Ford out snapped him, that's crazy to me. Like, he 48% snap share for Nick Chubb. Like, do
He
you
got
think a
dinged up
lot
on
of
2 downs.
yeah, but do you think a lot of that is like, I think he's probably gonna be like 60%. I only bring that up because I bet it last week and I felt so smart. I took Chubb over 12 and a half receiving yards, and he had 4 targets. He looked great in the passing game. It's 12 and a half again. I might just ride and play the same. I don't hate to play the same exact bet 2 weeks in a row,
Do it.
but I figured after 4 targets and 4 catches last week, this would be up to like 15 and a half, but it's still
Yeah.
12 and a half, same line as week 1.
I wouldn't be surprised if it gets up to like 18 and a half, like before long. They've been talking about him being a part of the passing game.
Yeah.
It was a huge reason I loved him more than Saquon as your
Yeah.
RB1 in fantasy, because I think he is more a part of the passing game and will continue to be that. And especially because Deshaun Watson can't fucking throw the ball more than 8 yards down the field.
Well, I think it's one of those lines where I know Will talks about all the time, and he's famous for betting no hits in an inning and then just keep going.
Yeah.
That's kind of my thing. I said it last week with Nick Chubb. I might just keep betting this line until they finally think, oh, wow, he's getting 4 to 5 targets a game. We should probably
Believe in
move this
yourself.
up closer to 20. And I
Believe
think
in
I'm just
your
going to keep doing
analysis,
that.
Brian.
I keep forgetting we got a double header Monday night, but the games overlap. 7:15 Eastern, Carolina.
It's so
Spain.
dumb. It's so
Yeah.
dumb.
I
know,
know
they're
they're
just-
just doing the
them-
NFL schedule.
They're just sneaking in this game that nobody gives a shit about with the Saints and Panthers. That's all.
Yeah. It's always funny that because if you think about it, the workday for most people ends at 5. They could have
Yeah.
easily done like a 6, 9:30 or like a 6, and they don't do it. It's a poor schedule.
That's the one thing I missed about the COVID year. You get that random like Monday 5 o'clock East. They had to reschedule all those games, so you get so many random like weekday games. But yeah, I agree.
That's the one
The
thing
hour is the
about
worst.
COVID.
I think the hour is the worst way to break it up too, because
Yeah,
it's not even like it's halftime when the other game starts. It's just a weird.
Why
it's
in
a
week
weird
2 too?
thing.
I know they used to do it in week 1, and that was fun, and that was like one early game, one late game,
Yeah.
and that late game would end at 1 in the morning.
Something last Monday that kept them from doing. What was it? I forget what it was. I thought there was something last Monday was the reason, but real quick, because this just popped up, and I know he's on your fantasy team, Will, Mr. Jahmyr Gibbs, 35 and a half rushing yards after they said they were going to try and use him more. I think it does make sense the more you think about why he wasn't used quite as much in that last game, when it's like opening night, prime time, playing the defending champs, blah, blah, blah. You don't want to just throw him out there. You want Montgomery to just not fumble and keep you in it. So I think this week they've talked about using him more. 35 and a half rushing yards is low. It's 65 and a half for the rushing and receiving combined, which I'm just like, no, I'm not betting on him to get 30 yards receiving or more in that one. I'm just going to go with the over 35 and a half. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I like that. Sounds good. Sounds
Cool.
Sounds low. Anything else before we wrap?
No, I think that's all I had to say.
What's the big storyline on Monday? Like, next time we're here, what is the big thing? Like,
Ooh, what a great question.
for me, it would be like the Jets if they won and they were 2-0. I was like, oh my God, Wilson might be decent. That would be like a shocker. That would be typical NFL, where it's like you think you know something, then something else happens and turn upside down. Oh, one thing I should mention too, and this has been starting to float out there with Minnesota 0-2. You wonder if Cousins to the Jets could be a thing. That's one of the first guys I thought about when he got hurt. Like, that could make the team. I don't think a Super Bowl winner with him. I just don't know that guy can win. But man,
I don't think if you have Justin Jefferson, you get rid of a guaranteed keep his stats alive and keep him the best wide receiver.
I don't think he'll be on the team next year, so you might as well. I think his contract's up. I think they're ready to move on.
Okay, then that is a much more viable situation. I think you nailed it though. I think it's either that game or it's KC Jacksonville and whatever happens with KC, because if they go 0-2, then that's a humongous storyline. If it's a good game and Trevor Lawrence looks good, that's another huge storyline. Is like, is this the second or third best team in the AFC? Blah blah blah. So I think there's gonna be big storylines coming out of that one, and then it's the Cowboys and it's the Jets. So like,
The biggest storyline of the week is Justin Fields MVP ? 348 passing yards.
That would put him over. But This was fun, boys. Short and sweet. Brian, Josh, appreciate it. Thank you to Pickett, Sleeper, Hall of Fame bets, all you guys in the chat. So good luck on all your plays. Enjoy the weekend. Monday, 1 o'clock Eastern. We'll be back. See you then.